French Prime Minister Michel Barnier has used special constitutional powers to push through his controversial budget without a parliamentary vote. In response, both left-wing and right-wing parties have submitted no confidence motions to oust Mr Barnier, who was appointed after snap parliamentary elections in July failed to deliver a majority government. If the vote is successful, Mr Barnier's coalition will be the first French government to be forced out by a no-confidence vote since 1962. And we are joined now by Dr Romain Fathi, a senior lecturer at the Australian National University. Dr Fathi, thank you for your time. Now, this is a complicated situation, but how did France get here and what exactly is happening?
So you may recall the election crisis that took place in France in June and failed to deliver a government, as in a majority. So at the moment, at the French National Assembly, which is the body from which the government emanates, you have many small parties and not enough to form a majority. So Michel Barnier has been constituting a government that is technically a minority government, meaning that it can be toppled from its left and toppled from its right. It was always very precarious.
And getting to this point of a no-confidence motion, what was the role of National Rally leader Marine Le Pen in this?
So that's an interesting one. Michel Barnier is trying to redress the finances of France. And so he has proposed to the National Assembly a fairly tough, budgetary responsible budget, meaning that both the far left and the far right are unhappy. He's trying to make sure that France's finances remain stable and sustainable. But he's not getting a majority at the Assembly, and under specific constitutional power, Article 49, subsection 3, the government can say, well, you don't want to pass the law, but I will make the law, and if you disagree, you can topple me. As you've said, that has only happened the last time in 1962, but the numbers are stacking up against Michel Barnier, and in particular, the fact that the National Rally of Marine Le Pen has 124 MPs in a 577 National Assembly means that it is a strong power. And if the far left and the far right vote together, they would have about 316 MPs, meaning they have an absolute majority, because that's over 289. I know it's quite specific, but as you know in Australia as well, politics can be a number game.
Yeah, indeed. Now, we're hearing that the vote is likely on Wednesday. Will it definitely go ahead? Are there other options here?
Oh, the vote will go ahead, unless the National Rally and the NFP, the New Popular Front, withdraw their censorship motion, the vote of no confidence, which they're not likely to do unless Barnier managed to strike deals over the weekend. That's very unlikely. The vote of no confidence will go ahead, and in fact, there will be two of them, one motion from the far left and one motion from the far right. What will be interesting is to see whether these two opposite groups vote together and in a way deliver chaos, because then once you've toppled the government, who is going to be governing France? But also to see whether the parties from the left who are voting together will in fact splinter. Because the New Popular Front is an assemblage of far left, left, socialist, moderate left. And these people kind of not always agree with one another. So maybe there is a small chance that actually the vote of no confidence will be defeated because there won't be a majority to topple the Barnier government.
Okay, so if they don't splinter, they manage to hold it together and get that vote of no confidence. What happens next, and what does it mean for the President, Emmanuel Macron?
That's a very good question, Gemma. If the vote of no confidence is adopted by an absolute majority of MPs at the National Assembly, this means the end of the Barnier government, which is a centre-right government. It then means that from the National Assembly, there needs to emerge a majority to create a new government. Marine Le Pen and the far right don't have the number. They can't even approach it. The closest thing that would get to it would be the left, from the far left to the moderate left, working together. It's proven difficult for them to work together, so it would again deliver a very unstable government. Another alternative is that President Macron tries to enlarge his majority by working with more moderate from the center left and from the center moderate right in order to have a center that is wider. At the moment, he's working with a conservative right, and it might mean that he needs to shift his political spectrum a bit more to the center, a bit more to the left to have a majority. But at the minute, it's talking in a crystal ball, really, because every scenario, I believe, is possible. That is, Barnier staying in power, the left forming government, a more centre-based government. What is very unlikely to happen would be a far-right government.
So is this a highly unusual situation that the French Parliament finds itself in?
Look, it is, and in a way, that situation has been created by the snap election that Emmanuel Macron called for in June and July. Generally speaking, the French Parliament is quite strong one way or another. Generally speaking, France since 1958 and the Fifth Constitution has managed to have a majority government. It's rare to have a minority government, and it's the same situation in Australia. When you have a minority government, it is very hard to stay in power. What is very new here is the level of fragmentation within the National Assembly. We've got a dozen or so political parties, each with a small number of MPs, meaning it's very hard for them to find out who actually holds power in France.
So we've got a lot of unknowns here and quite a bit of instability. How are markets, for example, reacting over there?
Well, I think there was a day last week where France borrowed at a higher rate on the financial markets than Greece. So the short answer is that what is happening at the moment in France, does have repercussion on financial markets and France's ability to service its debt. Now, the reality is that France has a lot of assets and, in fact, a lot of reserves, both physical and in the more ethereal markets. So France's stability is good, but the reality is that technically, under European consensus, a government should be under 3% deficit. The deficit of the French government at the moment is, I believe, 5.5%. So it's well above what it's technically allowed to do according to European Union, meaning that the European Union could decide to intervene. It's unlikely, but it is possible. So that creates some degree of pressure for the French to get their house in order.
And Dr. Fathi, the Prime Minister has warned of serious turbulence if the budget isn't passed. Is that true?
Well, he's doing his own bidding. It is true and it isn't. I mean, a budget is a political decision. You can be in deficit if that's going to create wealth further down the track. But at the moment, given the spending during the COVID era, it is true that servicing the debt of France is becoming far more costly for the French taxpayer. So the more money you spend refinancing your debt, the less money you have on essential services, be that, schools or hospitals or police. So it is a political choice. Either way, France, financial stability should remain strong. But Barnier is trying to create a narrative to say, be careful, don't be childish, because that can have consequences on France's destiny in the immediate and mid-term future.
Dr. Romain Fathi, Senior Lecturer at the Australian National University, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you very much.